Shalom. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Re'eh, meaning see, beginning with verse 26 of chapter 11 of Sefer Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy. Chapter 13 of our portion of Re'eh begins with the Torah warning us concerning a false prophet. Well, if there are false prophets, then there must be real prophets too. So, what is the Torah true perspective of prophecy? What is its purpose? Who is a true prophet? And how can we tell who is a false prophet? How does one become a prophet? Is there such a thing as true prophecy today? So open up your heart. Before we discuss and examine the false prophet, as we are warned against in our portion, we need to clarify for ourselves what exactly is prophecy. We know that it's a divine gift, a fundamental component of our relationship with God. In fact, throughout Torah, we find that this gift is given to specific individuals to serve as a direct communication from God, to guide, instruct, and sometimes chastise the people of Israel in order to redirect their hearts to God. In his classic Guide for the Perplexed, Maimonides, the Rambam, explains that prophecy's goal is to uplift the people and to bring them closer to the divine will. Prophets bring God's message to the people in a way that's comprehensible and relevant to their lives. Through the vessel of prophecy, God reveals his will and expectations for humankind, providing guidance for ethical behavior and moral principles and insights into the consequences of one's actions. From a deeper perspective, prophecy is a manifestation of God's desire to have an intimate relationship with humanity. The prophet, by becoming a channel for divine communication, serves as a bridge between the infinite and the finite. The great Hasidic masters describe prophecy as a reflection of the deep love that God has for his people, constantly seeking to guide them towards their ultimate purpose. And in his classic work of mystical knowledge called The Way of God, Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, views prophecy as a communication from the higher realms directly to the prophet's soul. The prophet becomes a conduit for divine light, receiving insights that transcend the normal human experience and are channeled through his soul. Now, there are two primary aspects to prophecy: an individual being worthy of receiving divine inspiration and knowing how to convey the message accurately. So just who could be a prophet? In next week's Parashat Shoftim, in chapter 18, Moshe speaks of the role of the prophet who will serve as a divine messenger. In chapter 7 of his Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, the laws of the foundations of the Torah, Rambam writes that prophecy is a divine communication only given to a person who has reached a high level of spiritual and intellectual perfection. According to Rambam, a true prophet must be wise, of sound character, and must be able to control their desires. Expounding upon the qualifications for prophecy, he outlines that there are three main requirements for an individual to attain the level of prophecy. Firstly, the individual must possess a high level of intellectual development and wisdom. This includes being well-versed and deeply immersed in Torah knowledge and having a deep understanding. The potential prophet must be intellectually prepared to receive and comprehend the divine messages that will be conveyed to him. He must be dedicated to fulfilling God's commandments. Only after reaching these levels of perfection might God see fit to bestow the gift of prophecy upon him. Secondly, the prophet must exhibit moral excellence and virtuous behavior. This includes leading a life of righteousness, humility, and ethical conduct. The individual must be free from any moral blemishes or sins that could impede his ability to receive prophecy. But since ultimately prophecy is a gift from God, the third criteria is that the individual seeking prophecy must be chosen by God to be a prophet. This selection is based on God's divine will. It cannot be achieved through human effort alone. The prophet has to be open and receptive to receiving divine inspiration, and he must be willing to fulfill the mission that God entrusts to him. The holy Baal Shem Tov, he takes this further in his teachings, and he greatly emphasizes the purity of heart and the overwhelming humility that's required to attain a level of prophecy. True prophecy is not simply a matter of being able to foretell the future. It's about revealing deep spiritual truths in order to guide the people in their service of God. Therefore, the true prophet can only be one who nullifies his own ego and personal desires entirely, one who cultivates a deep love and fear of God and aligns oneself completely with the will of God, becoming a clear and untainted vessel for the divine will, and allowing that will to flow through him without any interference. This requires complete devotion to God, with all one's thoughts, emotions, and actions entirely dedicated to fulfilling God's purpose. This level of devotion requires constant spiritual awareness and intense inner work. Writing further in The Way of God, Ramchal explains, true prophecy is a level of inspiration wherein an individual literally binds himself to God. So open up your heart in the deepest way. All these sources indicate that the process of becoming a prophet, as detailed in Torah, is extremely rigorous and requires significant spiritual preparation. And actually, there is literally a prophetic training process. Indeed, in ancient Israel, there were schools for prophets, known as Bnei HaNevi'im, Hebrew for sons of the prophets, where those aspiring to prophecy would study and prepare under the guidance and tutelage of established prophets. These schools were places of intense spiritual training, teaching the students the disciplines necessary to prepare them to receive prophecy. In fact, the prophet Samuel is known to have established such schools, as alluded to in 1 Samuel chapter 19. And these institutions continue to function throughout the prophetic era. Various classic sources and holy works of Torah outline the steps and disciplines that these prophets in training would undertake in order to purify themselves and prepare to receive the spirit of prophecy, from the basic stages that we could relate to far more esoteric levels. To start with, one of the fundamental requirements for prophecy is the purification of character. As mentioned, Rambam explains that a prophet must be wise, strong in his understanding, and of proper character. This means that the candidate must work diligently to refine their moral and ethical behavior, eliminating all negative traits such as desire, anger, pride, and greed. The prophet in training must also be exceedingly meticulous in the observance of all the commandments. And this includes not only the ethical commandments, but also those related to the attainment of physical and spiritual purity. The candidate also engages in intense Torah study and intellectual preparation. As mentioned, a deep and comprehensive knowledge of Torah is essential for anyone aspiring to prophecy. Rabbi Isaac Luria, known as the Holy Arizal, he teaches that knowledge of the secrets of the Torah is vital for prophetic preparation. The prophet in training would delve into the esoteric teachings, learning the inner dimensions of Torah wisdom that connect directly to the spiritual realms. The Arizal and other Kabbalists also taught that meditation on the sacred names of God is a critical aspect of prophetic training. These meditations help align the individual's consciousness with the divine will, making them more receptive to receiving the spirit of prophecy. Also, a degree of isolation and some ascetic practices were also required. In Tractate Sanhedrin, the sages note that prophets often would withdraw from society to engage in deep meditation and spiritual exercises. This period of isolation, known as hitbodedut, is essential for removing the distractions of the material world. Fasting is another practice that was often undertaken by prophets in training. The purpose of fasting is to weaken the physical body's hold over the spirit, reducing its influence over the soul and allowing the individual to focus entirely on spiritual matters. And according to the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, meditation and contemplation are very crucial for preparing oneself to receive divine inspiration. This includes meditating on the greatness of God, the wonders of creation, and the inner workings of the soul. But open up your heart deeper still. Another important Torah tradition is the role of joy in receiving prophecy. We are taught that prophecy cannot descend upon an individual unless they are in a state of joy. Joy opens the heart and mind to divine inspiration and makes a person suitable for receiving prophecy. Rambam explains that a prophet must be in a positive emotional state to receive prophecy. He states that prophecy does not rest upon a person when they're in a state of sadness or laziness, but only when they are in a state of joy. And this joy is not merely superficial happiness, but a deep spiritual completeness that comes from closeness to God, derived from the fulfillment of mitzvot. This joy creates the appropriate mental and emotional state for receiving prophecy. And of course, as everyone knows, the Baal Shem Tov famously taught that joy is always a fundamental requirement for spiritual elevation and serving God with enthusiasm. It's the key to opening the heart and mind to divine influence. And this extends to receiving divine inspiration as well. Thus Rabbi Nachman's famous maxim that it is a great mitzvah to be joyous always. Now that we've spoken a little bit about prophecy in general, back to the false prophet. Who is he? Verses 2-6 in chapter 13 state, "If there arises among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder of which he spoke to you comes to pass, saying, 'Let us go after other gods which you have not known, and let us serve them,' you shall not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams. For Hashem your God is testing you, to know whether you love Hashem your God with all your heart and with all your soul." These verses essentially establish Hashem's own criteria for identifying a false prophet, one who encourages the worship of other gods. Our sages discuss how the rabbinical court would test a prophet to determine whether they were true or false. Even if they perform miracles or give accurate predictions, the performance of miracles or signs alone does not validate a prophet. If a prophet advocates for idolatry or any practice that contradicts the Torah, they're false. God may allow a false prophet to perform wonders as a test for the people, and adherence to the Torah is the ultimate criteria. So a prophet who claims to have received a revelation from God, who delivers a message that contradicts any previous Torah commandment, or who advocates for idolatry or any practice contrary to the Torah, that man is a false prophet, regardless of any miracles or signs that they may perform. So too, if a prophet predicts that the laws of the Torah will be nullified in the future, he is to be considered a false prophet. This further underscores the Torah's unchangeable nature and the fact that true prophecy must always align with it. Loyalty to God and his commandments is the ultimate test of a prophet's authenticity. A false prophet seeks to lead the people away from God and the Torah, and thus Torah law specifies grave consequences for a false prophet. One who is proven to be a false prophet is liable for the death penalty, a harsh punishment that reflects the severe danger that false prophecy poses to the spiritual well-being of the community. The greatest danger posed by a false prophet is not simply the incorrect information or predictions, but the potential to sway people away from Hashem and towards idolatry. But wait, if a prophet is false, how does he have the power to perform signs or miracles? The verses we read already answer that question. It's all part of the program. God allows false prophets to arise as part of his divine plan to test the people's faith and commitment to Torah. As our verse states explicitly, for Hashem your God is testing you, providing opportunities to see if you'll have the integrity and the faith to reject the false prophet, even in the face of seemingly convincing deceptive signs or wonders that actually contradict God's Torah. Bottom line, true prophets always lead the people with humility and faithfulness towards Torah, and while false prophets may be convincing and charismatic, they are always characterized by arrogance and deceit, and the ultimate test is to check their alignment with the Torah's teachings. So open up your heart in the very deepest way. Our big question today: is there such a thing as prophecy in the world in our time? The answer is no, but. You see, today we don't have prophets in the classical sense of the term. The era of prophecy came to an end with the destruction of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. That is, the era of open prophetic revelation ended then. However, God, in his compassion, still allows divine insight to emerge, and so Ruach HaKodesh, levels of divine inspiration, continues to exist. And individuals can still attain a level of divine insight, although not on the same level as biblical prophecy. And here's the thing. After the destruction of the temple, the channels of divine light that once flowed openly were severely restricted. The purity required for true prophecy is rare in our post-temple world, and so this divine inspiration filters through to us in a more concealed and indirect manner. However, sparks of prophecy can still be found in those who are spiritually untainted. What does spiritually untainted mean? In a fascinating lesson, our sages state, from the day that the temple was destroyed, prophecy was given to children and fools. The idea is that after the cessation of formal prophecy with the destruction of the temple, the conventional channels of prophecy were closed, but some form of divine insight remained, albeit in a different, in a less direct form. Rashi, in his commentary on this Talmudic passage, explains that while true prophecy ceased, occasional prophetic insights might still be found in the innocent utterances of children, or in the seemingly nonsensical words of those considered foolish. Children in their innocence and fools in their simplicity might tap into these sparks, perhaps unintentionally, precisely because they are closer to a state of pure potentiality. This is not to say that these individuals are actually prophets, but rather that God may choose to reveal truths through them in unexpected ways. Divine messages may be hidden in the innocent or direct perspective of children or the seemingly irrational speech of simpletons. The Baal Shem Tov teaches that the reason children and fools might receive these insights is due to their lack of filters and inhibitions, as well as their lack of ego and sophistication, making them more open vessels for divine influence that might be overlooked by those who are more worldly or intellectually sophisticated. These ones are not encumbered by intellectual pride or sophisticated complexities. They're not burdened by societal norms or intellectual constraints, which could obstruct the clarity of divine communication. And so they may, even inadvertently, tap into these hidden streams of divine wisdom. Children and those thought by others to be fools are not politically correct, and they haven't internalized the fake societal norm that prohibits one from saying certain things, from pointing out truths like the idea that the king has no clothes on. In other words, perhaps the Baal Shem Tov is really saying that children and fools are not sophisticated enough to know that you are expected to lie. They speak the uncomfortable truth as they see it, as things really are. And similarly, our sages teach, in the absence of the temple, divine messages might come through in dreams, visions, or even seemingly random occurrences, even in unexpected places. The spiritually diminished state of the world allows for this inspiration to manifest in ways that are obscure. And the truth is, open up your heart, really, any individual, even one who is not consciously seeking it, may serve as a conduit for divine insight in an innocent and unguarded moment. So we should be encouraged to remain open to divine messages that may come from unexpected sources, because divine inspiration and wisdom in the world is still present and accessible, even in a diminished form. In any event, we also have to remember that while prophecy is a valuable and impactful tool in our relationship with God, it's a cherished gift, but still, it's not the sole means of communication. The Torah itself serves as the primary source of divine guidance, and it provides a comprehensive framework for living a life in alignment with God's will. Although prophecy has temporarily ceased, individuals still can and must cultivate a personal relationship with God through prayer, study, acts of kindness, and adherence to the commandments. These practices enable individuals to connect with the divine and experience God's presence in their lives. And the disciplines of prophetic preparation that we've been learning about now, including Torah study, prayer, and moral refinement, these are still relevant for those who seek spiritual elevation and divine inspiration. They serve as a guide for anyone on a spiritual journey, and they emphasize the importance of inner purity, devotion, and alignment with God's will. So while the formal institution of prophecy does not currently exist, the spiritual preparation for divine inspiration still holds great relevance for anyone who wishes to receive divine guidance or insight. But now, please, open up your heart deeper than ever before in your whole life. It's taught that a sign of the imminent redemption and the fulfillment of God's messianic promise will be the return of the spirit of prophecy to the world before the arrival of the Mashiach, as Maimonides writes in his classic epistle known as Letter to Yemen. This is exactly what the prophet Joel tells us in chapter 3 and verse 1, where we read, "And it shall come to pass afterward, that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions." This verse tells us of the pre-Messianic era, when there will be a widespread renewal of prophecy in Israel. As the world approaches this time, the spiritual environment will become more conducive to prophecy, and individuals with the proper spiritual preparation will once again receive prophetic visions. The prophet Joel assures us, in Hashem's name, that the gift of prophecy will return, bringing back heavenly guidance and clarity, closeness to God and divine insights, to a world sorely in need of spiritual enlightenment and hope.